I'll move outside demand gen content and everything. It's more towards the leadership role that you have been playing, right? Marketing is very subjective in nature, and this is again a common question that I keep asking any leadership folks that come in here. Marketing is very subjective, and now specifically since you work with early stage, that means you have your founders that you interact with, right? Where the decision making or the approvals or the brainstorming, right? In general, not the decision making as such, but brainstorming is with the founders and all the top leadership, right? Because it's so marketing is so subjective. Second, early stage companies are so founder driven. The mindset has to translate. How do you tackle? How do you convince these kind of stakeholders? Because I'm sure you would come across situations where you have a different hunch or different understanding than what is on the table with other people sitting there. How do you tackle this?
I think first is there's a couple of things. One is I think you should have strong self-confidence in
Okay.
know that you've been hired for this role. So like you kind of call the shots within marketing,
Right.
right? Of course. So like don't just trust yourself. Like ultimately whatever decision you take, like is perhaps the right decision, right? There's a lot of years of experience and conversations and trust from these folks that actually come with that, right?
Mm.
And I think the other thing I would say, which is probably even more important than this, is that set expectations from the beginning. Who takes the final call? So, like, usually, for example, with my CEO and I'll be like, okay, these are kind of like the major themes you need to focus on. Who owns, like the KPI, right? Like, so there might be a revenue KPI, there might be a sign up KPI, there might be all of these different things, right? Like, so who owns what, right? And ultimately, whoever owns that is basically kind of takes the final call, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've seen a lot, like sometimes, CEOs will be like, okay, no, I don't agree with this. I don't agree with this, right? But it's important to hold your ground because obviously with an open mind, right? Like you might be
Of
wrong
course.
as well.
Of course.
But like what CEOs like is that, when people come in with their own point of view and a strong point of view, right? Which you can spar on to be able to find the right solution, right? Like if everybody, if you worked in a company where CEO is, right, and everybody just does what the CEO does, right? Like obviously, you've seen those companies where they go,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, and CEOs know that they expect that, at least the good ones that I've worked with. I've been
Yeah.
fortunate there. And I think do that, right? And then these are the only two key stakeholders, like you and the CEO are like the major ones that decide 80%, right?
Yeah.
Everyone else give their opinion, take all that feedback, marinate over it, and decide ultimately which one you want to take, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just more about collecting feedback.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would probably be my suggestion.
Right. I think this comes with experience also, that self-confidence that you're talking about. I think that is most important with young folks joining in with 2-3 years of experience. They definitely, when a founder says something, that they hesitate a little, because I think they also understand that they can be wrong. The probability could be high because they still have a lot to learn. So I think keeping an open mind is important. Taking the opinions, as you mentioned, is very important. But keeping the expectations right is probably the most important aspect, just in the initial